log in, log out, log in, log out. You gotta log in. Are we live? Let me, let's see. Let's see. Are we live? Are we live? Are we live? Are we live? It says we're live, but I don't see anything. I don't see anything. Want to make sure we're live right now. I don't know why it says we are live when I do not see anything. I do not see anything. We are doing a refresher on session management in terms of setting, troubleshooting any connectivity issues that you might have with a fix session. How to get things started in the right way. I do not see anything. I do not see that we are live. Oh, so it looks like we are live. I apologize. This is horrible. All right. So apparently we've been live the whole time and I was not aware of that. So anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to be talking today about troubleshooting. This is kind of a refresher for you guys. Troubleshooting your fix sessions. How do you do it? So we're going to start from the beginning. So first of all, obviously, well, not necessarily obviously, right? If you're going to be establishing a new fix session with a client, a counterparty, whether it is for testing purposes, you're doing certification testing, or it's an actual production session, one of the first things you want to start with is obviously you need to have the connection details, obviously, just like any other connection. You need to have these things like the IP address and port. Now, in a production environment, trading environment, security is obviously a very big deal. So you will also need to put in some kind of a request to your network operations team, if you do have one, and they will need to permission the IP. So let's get a little bit of context in terms of what we're talking about. So the perspective is you want to set up a connection where someone is going to connect to you, right? So the client is going to connect to you for testing purposes, whatever the reason, trading, doesn't matter. The point is they want to establish a connection with you. I can guarantee you that wherever you work, there is or there are a lot of security that is in place to avoid obviously hacking and cyber attacks. So, for example, the most basic thing is whitelisting of IP addresses. You're not gonna just let anybody just come try to connect. Also, ports being blocked. You don't want people coming in and probing and trying to see any vulnerabilities in your network. So things are going to be pretty locked down. So more than likely, you need to put in a ticket to the network operations team, and you're going to have to let them know. First of all, obviously communicate with the client. You know, what IP address are you going to be connecting to us from? Hopefully they have some basic networking knowledge and they don't give you their internal IP address. They give you the external one, so that you can actually, that's the IP that you're going to actually see, right? If you're dealing with someone who's kind of a novice, they might not be aware of this. They might, be aware of their internal IP and try to give that to you. No good, right? So we want to make sure you get an external IP from them. So this is the IP they're going to connect with. You let them know which port they should be connecting to. Obviously, those are the details you're going to get from the network operations team. They will need to perhaps adjust a firewall rule to enable this IP through this port for whatever connectivity, depending on how, bureaucratic, big bank you're working at, there might be, things beyond just, putting in the request in terms of compliance. They want to know what is the purpose of this connection, and then there's an approval process of whether they're going to approve it or not. You may need to get approval from higher manager. Anyway, let's skip the red tape and let's focus on the fun stuff, the technical. So, client has given you the IP. You gave the IP to your team. They have whitelisted the IP right? You get an approval coming back saying, hey, this IP is now whitelisted. Your client can now try to connect to us. So that is purely from a networking standpoint, but this is the fixed protocol channel. So we want to talk about the fixed part. So obviously with the fixed part of it, there's going to be routing tags, right? You have sender comp, target comp. So depends on the type of connection, whether it's a hub and spoke network or it's just going to be a direct connection. But regardless, you need to discuss the routing tags. The client needs to know what your comp ID is. That's going to be the target comp from their perspective, right? That's so they're going to target your comp ID, so that'll be their target comp, and then they need to let you know what their sender comp is going to be. So, sending company, right? So this client is connecting to you. They need to let you know how they will identify themselves in fixed speak. So, our sender comp, right? The client sender comp is going to be my target comp when I respond to them, right? Just like mail, right? When you send a letter, right? You have the party that you are sending the letter to, and then you have your return address, which is who is sending the letter. So same thing here, right? So when they send to me, they're going to target my comp ID, and they're going to send their sender comp ID, so identify themselves. And I'm just going to flip it when I go back. But bottom line is you need to establish what the sender comp, target comps are. You need to also be aware of what type of connection, because if you're testing or it's a production connection where, again, direct connection, so it's just sender comp, target comp. If it's going to be a hub and spoke type of connection where you are sending to me to deliver somewhere else, then you have to think about things like on behalf of comp ID, target, deliver to comp, deliver to sub, sender sub, target sub, those types of things. So you have your routing tags, all this stuff needs to be communicated, right? IP address, port, sender comp, target comp, and then the other extended tags if it's relevant. So the IP is whitelisted, the port, you have the port that you've given them, that's what they're going to try to connect on. You have all the fixed details. You need to know the fixed version as well, obviously. If this is a certification, then obviously they need to know what fixed version. You need to give them your specifications. So the specifications will indicate the fixed version, 4.2, 4.4, whatever it is. So they should be coming in with whatever version that you're supposed to certify or that you certified if it's a production connection. So I think those are the basics. Obviously, now you're going to schedule a time to test, whether it's a certification or production. And I'll tell you why. Certification, obviously, the whole point is to test. So obviously, you need to schedule the test. But even in a production environment or production session, you still need to schedule a test, because you don't just whip up a connection and then just start trading with it. You need to at least do some level of due diligence to make sure that once this session has been configured, that you can actually connect. There's no issues. I'm going to get into troubleshooting in a second. And that you're, even beyond that, able to actually send an order. So usually, with the production, every company is going to have different rules, right? But typically, if we're going to enable a production session, right, before we just say, go nuts, send your orders, short Tesla, we would want to have them send like a test order, right? Something small, something low risk, one share of IBM at a penny or something. Just to we want to establish the connection. So we would do this obviously as early as possible. We want to avoid getting close to trading hours in terms of maybe there's an issue. You might actually do this the day before you want to start trading. It's up to you, up to your firm's policy. So you could actually do this test the day before. Probably advisable, because so you have more time to resolve any issues. But some people, you might be, for whatever reason, you might want to do your test on the day of trading. So obviously you want to do this as early as possible. Bring up the session, and then once appropriate, send a test order. So you know that you've established a connection. Connection was good. You sent an order and it's good. Obviously, if it's certification, yeah, there you go. ZVZZT. I see Ryan just commented. So that's a test symbol that you can use. that. So again, it depends on the environment, depends on what your rules are. You can use that being a test symbol. Um, Reason being, with a test symbol, obviously the risk is much lower because getting filled on a fake symbol is obviously less risk than the IBM at a penny. I mean, I think buying a share of IBM at a penny, I think anybody would love to have that order be filled, but probably not going to happen. But it is an actual order. If you do that, right? If you send an actual order, depends on where you send it, but whatever. Whatever you decide to do, the bottom line is you want to do a test, right? So that is configuration, setting it up, comp ID, networking, and then we just dealt with the production scenario where you want to do a test before you actually go live, make sure it's good, thumbs up to the trader, you're good to go. Now, troubleshooting, because the reality is things don't always go according to plan. So here are some of the things you might run into. So the client tries to connect to you, right? And they get a connection refused. Oh my goodness, connection refused. I think one way to think about this to help you remember perhaps is when you think about that phrase connection refused, think about it like a nightclub. For those of you that still go to nightclubs, I haven't been to a nightclub in a long time. Anyway, think about it like a nightclub, right? And think about getting rejected at the door. The bouncer, he just bounced you out. He was like, no, you got a rejection, right? He says, you can't come in. If you share that with a friend, it is obvious that you made it to the club, right? The only way to get rejected at a club is to actually go to the club. The only way to get a connection refused is to sort of make a connection, right? So some level of connection occurred, right? Because otherwise, who's refusing? I mean, obviously it's not a person, right? But you know what I mean. There needs to be a connection for there to be a response to the connection and saying, nope, you're rejected, right? So think about that. So that tells me that you've made it, right? But something is not quite right. Now, in this case, it's not going to be a comp ID or something fixed. We're not talking fixed. We're talking network layer, right? I don't know if Ryan knows where we're going with this, but in that case, if you're getting a connection refused, then it's probably going to be something like the IP address, right? The IP address was supposed to be whitelisted, and here's the thing. This is, this is not really, we're not dealing with a trading sort of production troubleshooting. We're just establishing a session. But some of the same skills we would use in troubleshooting a production issue are definitely relevant here in terms of your way of thinking. So, one might assume that, they are coming in with the wrong IP, right? You whitelisted the IP, so you know it should work. You're confident everything's good, right? So if they're getting refused because of their IP address, then they screwed up. Are you sure about that? Did you screw up? What IP address did you actually whitelist? Did you make a typo? They gave you the IP of what they're supposed to be coming in as, right? And then you gave it to the network operations team, supposedly, but you made a mistake, right? So did you whitelist the right IP? That's a question you want to know. Obviously, it could be them as well. Double check. They told you such and such IP address we're coming in from. Take a look at the email, right, that they sent, the confirmation. Look at the IP they're coming in with, or ask them to confirm what IP they're coming in with. You may not have visibility to seeing them because if this is a firewall thing, you're not going to see that, right? Unless you're doing trade support and you're also on the NOC team. Maybe a small firm, I guess. But anyway, so you want to make sure that you're on the same page. What you whitelisted and what they're coming in with, is it the same IP address, right? Be very clear on that. Obviously, also port as well. Would you get a refusal on no. So port issue, let's talk about a port issue. So A refusal is definitely like a something said, no go. Obviously, trading environment very secure. We don't want random connections coming in, right? But if you're getting another failure, so let's say that it's an IP thing and you figure it out, the IP is correct now. They try to connect again, and then you're like, okay, we're great now. But then you get another error message, and the error message says connection timeout. So let's touch on a little bit of programming, just a little snippet. We're not going to get too complicated with that, but let's touch on a little snippet because I want you to understand what's behind that. And we cover this in my trading system deep dive series, which I've been working on for so long now. It's coming, guys. Anyway, so let's talk about that. So timeout. So timeout is saying that you try to establish this connection, and there was a period of time that you were kind of waiting. It's kind of like we talk about with heartbeats. I always say it's like a hello, are you there? And the person's supposed to respond and say, yes, I'm here. Are you there? And then you go back and forth, right? So it's kind of like I'm kind of like knocking on the door when you try to make this connection, kind of knocking on the door, right? And then you wait for connection established, right? But that doesn't happen, right? You wait and you wait. How long do you wait, right? So whoever wrote the software that is behind whatever you're using to make this connection would have programmed in there some kind of exception handling or error handling, right? And just so you understand, it's even if you're not doing programming, I think it's important for you to understand what's behind the thing that you're supporting, because in a troubleshooting scenario where you might need to involve development, it is helpful if you can speak their language, if you can kind of understand the architecture behind these things that you are supporting, so you can speak more effectively to them. So you don't have to be a programmer, you don't have to necessarily know how to program, but if you understand, we want to handle things gracefully. So for example, in Python, we have a concept called try except. So if I were using a Python program to establish this fixed connection, I would want to have a try except block code, and I would put that in there to basically it's that's what I love about Python. It's very sort of intuitive in terms of the language, right? Because you're literally setting up a code block to try something and hopefully accept it, right? So basically, what you're doing is you're setting up a mechanism such that if your connection attempt fails, that the program doesn't just crash, it knows what to do. In this case, prompt the user, or in the application log, write an error message saying connection timeout, right? 1 second. I apologize, I got allergies here. It is that time of year. 1 second, guys. Apologies. So, in the code, similar to the heartbeat interval, which we'll talk about in a second in fixed protocol, I would want to specify how long I'm going to wait for a connection acceptance. So in the code, I'm writing instructions of the action of trying to make a connection. I'm trying to make a connection, right? And it may not work. There's a situation where it may not work, and I want to be able to handle that gracefully. So somewhere in the code, I would put a time, right? I would say, try this for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds. And if you don't get a response back in that period of time, I want you to do this, right? Prompt the user an error message, say connection timed out, write that in the log. So I just wanted to give you that little snippet, right? That's the kind of thing that would be typically behind why you would see that in your logs on your screen somewhere saying a timeout, because you have exceeded the amount of time that was configured or programmed into the code, which is allowed to sit waiting for a response to a connection attempt, right? So if you see a timeout, one of the reasons, now let's get back on it, on the troubleshooting side, is going to be something, it could potentially be a port access issue, so a port availability issue. So what could happen is you are trying to connect, your IP is whitelisted, no issues there, but the specific port that you're trying to connect to is not what we call up and listening, right? Port status varies, right? You can have a port that is in a status of connected, where there's an established connection, something is using the port, or a status of listening, where it's listening for connection attempts. That is what this port should be in, right? If it's ready to connect, it should be in a status of listening for connection attempts, and then you'd be able to connect. But here's a scenario, right? The port that you told the client to connect on is actually a port that something or someone else is using for something else. So someone or something else established a connection on that port. So the port is not available. So now they come and try to establish their fixed connection, and the port's not available, so they can't connect, right? So they're going to sit there waiting for their timeout value, right? 10 seconds, 30 seconds, whatever the application is set to. Once that is exceeded, you get this timeout, right? Connection timeout. So what I would want to do is use a command like netstat. Netstat is going to be able to give me the port status, right? So I run that command and use grep to filter, because you can get a lot of stuff if you just do netstat. Grep to filter out to see, and then you're going to be able to see the port status, and then you can see if it's in the appropriate listening status, and there would solve your issue potentially, because if it's not in listen, then you know that's not the right port, or there's some issue. Maybe there's something that connected to it previously and it didn't release the port. Depending on what it is, if you're clear on what it is, you might be able to kill whatever process, in Unix, of course. You could kill whatever it is that is using that. Obviously, be very clear on what you're killing, right? But if you're clear on what it is, because maybe it's actually a previous connection attempt, could be a number of things. But the bottom line is port status would be a reason why you get a connection timeout. So we got a connection refusal, we got a timeout, and also there's another thing to mention is in your troubleshooting, telnet to the port and IP is a standard test that is very good to do. If you are able to telnet to the port and IP, then that is letting you know, obviously you don't have an IP whitelisting issue. Obviously the port is available. You are verifying that an application should be able to connect from where you are. Obviously you're going to do telnet from the port and IP from the location that you want to connect from. So for example, if you are the client, so you're trying to help the client to troubleshoot the issue, right? So the client is trying to connect from their fix engine, which is located in a specific network, right? They would want to run this command from that same location, right? Because obviously you don't want to run it from someplace else. You want to verify a path from there to your fix engine. Ping is another test you can use, obviously, but ping is just kind of ping is just letting you know, is there an actual physical path from here to where I'm trying to get to, right? Successful ping doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to connect on an application level, right? You have traceroute as well, which you can use to kind of, if your ping is failing, right? So there is not a path all the way to the fix engine I'm trying to connect to. But what does that mean exactly? What's happening? Where are my packets going? I'm sending this login request, and it's going through the network, and then it's all a black hole, right? Ping is very low resolution. Either you can make it or you can't make it. Traceroute gives you the journey, right? So I would like to look at it as when you're pinging, let's say we're talking about buses instead of packets, or you have buses that are delivering passengers from one location to the next. You can monitor the destination only, and you can have people report to you, bus 1 arrived, bus 2 arrived, right? But then when bus 3 doesn't arrive, all you know is bus 3 didn't arrive. But why? Where is bus 3? You have no idea because you're only monitoring at the destination, right? With traceroute, what you're doing is it's basically as if you are doing the same thing that you were doing at the destination, but you're doing it at all the bus stops, right? Bus stop 1, bus stop 2. So you're getting reports from every location along the journey, right? So you can keep going through the list until you get to a bus stop where they report, oh, he didn't show up. So now you know the problem is between that bus stop and the previous one. So the same kind of thing with traceroute, right? Traceroute, you're sending these packets and they're going through the network, going through the switches and routers, right? It's hopping, and you're looking at the time as well. There could be a part of the network that has an issue. So if you look at the time that it's taking to get from location to location, maybe there's a particular area where it slows down and you're like, okay, something funky is going on here. But the main thing is you want to look at how far it gets. A key detail that I usually will get from this is the IP address, which is the final hop in your trace route. Is that in your network or is it in my network? If it's in your network, that's where I hang up the phone and I'm like, it's your fault. Goodbye. No, that would be very unprofessional. Don't do that. But at least you know that it's on their end. So really, I mean, be professional. Try to help the client as much as possible. If you can answer questions or give suggestions, but ultimately it's going to be on their responsibility to figure. It's their network, right? You can't see inside of their network. So either they need to figure it out on their own or they need to, contact someone who can assist them. But if the final IP is on their end, then it's on their end. It's their deal. If it's one of your IPs, like maybe it's what we call the DMZ, the demilitarized zone. So basically, typically you have I like to describe it as a network lobby. When people, so you have an office building. Security is obviously a big deal. You don't want random people coming into your office, right? But you don't want people on the sidewalk, right? You want them to be able to enter the building to some degree, hence the lobby, right? They can come into the lobby. So technically, anyone can just walk into the lobby, right? So you have this convenience of coming here, and now I'm going to authenticate you whether you can go up or not, right? I'm going to call someone and say, hey, Johnny's here, and then someone's going to off. So same kind of concept. Got the DMZ, you have a much more loose security protocol so people can connect to the DMZ, but there is where we're going to say, okay, who are you? Who you're here to see. So we're looking at your IP address. We're looking at the white list. Are you on the guest list, basically, right? So if it's an IP at that location, then I need to talk to the network operations team. They swear to me that they whitelisted this IP, but maybe they didn't, right? So it's kind of like, hey, client's trying to connect. We did a trace route. We had them do a trace route, and the final IP we're seeing is it's in the DMZ. Can you take a look and see what's going on? Did this get whitelisted? Did somebody make a mistake? So those are the kind of details. I think there was something else I wanted to say about the trace route, but don't remember. Okay, so we did trace route, we did ping test, we did telnet to the port and IP. We talked about the center comp and target comp. So I think we covered most of the networking things. So let's get beyond that. So you're able to establish a connection, right? Now we're in the fix world, right? That's what it's all about, the fix world. We're so excited. Now we look in the fix logs and we see our first messages in there. 35 equals A. Hello, welcome. That is your login request, right? You are expecting in response. So the client sends a 35 equals A. You're expecting in response a login. It's kind of like, just like how we communicate as humans. I say hello, and then you say hello. You say hello back, same thing, right? So 35 equals A, hello. then you give it 35 equals A back. You flip the routing tags. Sender becomes target, target becomes sender, sending back the same message. Ideally, they'll be coming in with sequence number 1, right? And you respond sequence number 2, and then you keep incrementing. But here's the thing that might happen. So fix related issues now. They come in with sequence number 1,000,001. It's 7 a.m. in the morning. Why are you coming into me with 1,000,001 for a sequence number? Did you forget to reset your sequence numbers yesterday? So sequence number issues, right? They may come in with a higher than expected sequence number. I mean, normally before you do this, you'd want to reset to 1 and 1. That's what we say, reset to 1 and 1, right? So incoming sequence number 1, outgoing sequence number 1. But if that didn't happen for some reason, then you have a sequence number reset situation where, if you're higher than expected or if you're lower than expected. Lower than expected usually should be responded to in a very, very angry and harsh manner. I don't mean that in terms of you, but in terms of the fixed protocol. That's scary, right? It is understandable that maybe I missed some messages, right? No big deal. I'm expecting you to send me, sequence number 5, and you come in with 20. Okay, so I missed some messages. So I'm just going to say, hey, can you send these messages? So you send a sequence number, you send a sequence number, basically you can do like a gap fill, right? So you can send a fixed message that indicates begin sequence number, end sequence number. The sequence number that I was expecting, I want from that up until the sequence number that you came in with, right? So if I'm expecting you to come in with 5 and you came in with 100, then I want you to send me from 5 to 100, right? And then when you send those messages, you don't just send them and act as if like, nothing happened, right? You're just gonna resend messages and just act like, nothing happened. Something happened, right? I didn't get your messages and I sent you a request to resend them. So when you send them, you need to be clear on why you're doing this, right? So we're not going to get into the nitty gritty of it, but you guys can look at the protocol. But basically in that message, I need to indicate via a specific tag that these messages are, I think pos dupe is what you'd have, pos dupe, a possible duplicate. And you also need to indicate what this is in reference to. So there needs to be a connection between these messages that you're resending, right? When you send a resend, send me these messages. I don't have them. Can you send them? When you send them, you indicate in the message that this is a response to this message that you sent me. Why are you sending me these messages? Because of this message. You sent me this message, which I indicate in the fixed message that, hey, that's why I'm doing this, right? And also the pos dupe. I think pos dupe, is it equals Y or something? It's been a while, but there's a flag that you put on it that indicates that this might be a duplicate, right? So sequence number issues. Let's say, and we talked about the comp ID. But let's say there's a miscommunication. They come in. They said they were coming in with Johnson 1, sender comp, Johnson 1. They come in with sender comp, Johnson 12, right? The fix engine is like, what is this? I don't know who this is. So you can get like a business. Would that be a business reject or a session reject? No, business. I think it's a business reject because it's session is you're violating the specification, right? Sending a sender comp of Johnson 1, Johnson 12, that's not a violation of the specification, right? That is legit. You can send, whatever name you want. The field, I'm sure, has a limitation of how many characters, but if it's within the amount of characters and it's, valid strings that you put in there, it's fine. It's not an issue. So you're not going to get a 35 equals 3 session reject because it's a valid fix message. However, this is kind of like a business issue, right? Business issue in terms of, and there's different ways to handle this. I'm not saying that's necessarily the way to do it. and that's why you do certifications, right? You have an agreed upon protocol in terms of how we're gonna, you know, send orders and do session management, all that kind of stuff. So as long as we can agree and we can certify the behavior, it's good, right? So you are in a situation where you're speaking about something and you totally lose your frame of thought, like I have right now. So I have no idea what I was just talking about. So what are we saying? We're saying comp ID. So potentially business reject, unknown comp ID. Hopefully in tag 58, the text, you can put a text message in there, let the counterparty know that the reason I'm rejecting you is because I don't know this comp ID. They could also be targeting a comp ID that is wrong, right? So they come in with a center comp that I know, that's fine. I know you, right? You know me, I know you. But who is this guy you're trying to connect to? So you told the client to connect to you as, Carlisle Trade, and they come in with a target comp of Carl Trade, not authorized or unknown. You give some kind of reject message going back to them. We don't know who you are, right? So the comp ID has to be correct. Center comp has to be correct. And typically when you do this connection attempt, whether you're using a GUI or you're looking at the fix logs, you might be tailing it, tail-F to look at the logs in real time. You'll see this activity, the login message come in, and then a response coming back and saying, I don't know what this is, I don't know who you are. Then there's encryption, so security. Obviously production environment or just trading environment in general, because it could be certification in UAT environment, not production. But in general, security is a big deal. So you have the ability to encrypt. So in terms of using password authentication, so basically when they send a login message, they can be sending their password encrypted. So therefore you can authenticate them. So, not only do I know the comp IDs, not only do I know your IP and all that stuff is verified, but when you coming in, I want you to also, it's kind of like an extra layer of security. I want to also make sure that you have the right password to be able to connect. And again, this should be encrypted. I'm sure, compliance will have issues with you sending passwords unencrypted in your fix logs. Depends on the environment, but typically you're probably going to want to have it encrypted. So password, center comp, target comp, password is correct. So if everything is good, they send a 35 equals A, you send a 35 equals A, right? I say hello, you say hello. Then what comes next? What comes next is heart beating, right? Heart beating is, like I said before, it's kind of like are you there, right? So one side of this, so you have two parties connected in a fixed connection, right? And one side says, are you there? The other side says, yes, I am. Are you there? And then it's just over and over again, right? So you're sending these heartbeats 35 equals 0 messages, and you keep sending them. The gap or the time between them is going to be set by your heartbeat interval. That would be a fixed engine configuration value that you would have set and you should have agreed upon. So both of you should have agreed, usually 30 seconds, 60 seconds, whatever it is. If someone messed up, hopefully not you, and you set it to, you set it to 30-second heartbeat interval. Client has it set to 60-second heartbeat interval. What's going to happen? So if you have configured 30-second interval, that means you're expecting a message, a heartbeat, or something within 30 seconds. You're expecting some kind of activity, because this is session management. This is how you keep the connection live, validate that the connection is in a good state. That's really why we're doing this, right? Because if there's trading going on, there's orders and executions, then this is not necessary, right? Obviously, the connection is fine because you're receiving messages and you're sending back and forth. There's a message going back and forth. But what if it's a slow time, it's early in the morning or whatever it is, and there is no activity? How do you know that the connection is good, that it's ready to go in case you want to actually use it? you have these heartbeats going back and forth, making sure the connection's up, right? Are you there? Are you there? Are you there? Are you there? You're set for a 30-second interval, which means within 30 seconds, you're expecting something back. If there's no trading activity or anything else like that, then I'm expecting another heartbeat in 30 seconds from you. But you're set to 60, right? So 30 seconds goes by. So I said, are you there? 30 seconds go by. I don't hear anything. I hear anything from you. So basically, the fix engine is set to this is alert status 1 or whatever it is. This is the first level of sort of red flag. So the logic is basically, we had an agreement to talk to each other every 30 seconds. Something should be coming over every 30 seconds. You didn't respond to me, right? I think that you're not there, right? I think you're not there. I think something's wrong. I'm not sure about this. So what we do is we send a test request, right? I want to test this connection because I don't trust it, right? So I send a test request. I think 35 equals H. Depends on the fixed version, of course, 4.2. 35 equals H message. So I'm sending a test request. So I'm kind of, the heartbeats are kind of a test, right? It's like, are you there? Are you there? Are you there? But now it's like more formal. Now I'm doing something because I think there's an issue. There is no issue, technically. You just have a 60-second interval. I have a 30. So I'm expecting a response in 30. You're not going to send anything back until 60 because that's the interval that you set, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to send a test request. Hey, man, what the hell is going on, right? 35 equals 8 message. 35 equals H, right? So the message gets to you, and I think you might do that a couple times before you take sort of escalate. And this is all automatic, by the way. This is not manual. I'm illustrating it in a story format to make it easier to understand. But this is something this is how the engine works. This is how it's coded. This is how it's configured. So this is the behavior. So you send a test request. They're supposed to see that, right? And respond to it and say, hey, I'm here. Everything's fine. If you send the test request and they don't respond, I think you tried a couple times. And again, this is not you. This is the fix engine doing it. Then what will happen is you'll bring the connection down, right? So the connection will be dropped because you have gotten indications that there's a serious problem here. We do not want to have a fixed session just sitting around and we don't know what's going on. It might be good. It might not be good. We're not hearing anything from the other side. Something is seriously wrong here. So we need to bring this connection down, which is going to trigger, hopefully you have good monitoring, some kind of monitoring where you will be alerted that there's a session down, some kind of dashboard, and you'll see it's in red. So oh, the session's down. What's up? And then you call the counterparty. You say, what's going on? Hopefully before you do that, you take a look at the logs and you'll see right away. And this is the whole beauty of practicing and understanding the fixed protocol. So you should be able to look in that log and see, okay, so we send heartbeat and it looks like they didn't respond. Okay, check the configuration, 30-second interval. How much time went by? 30 seconds. Okay, so they exceeded the heartbeat interval. Okay, test request went out. I don't see anything coming back in the logs. Okay, so they're not responding. I don't know what's going on. Something's up. Call the contact. Hey, man, what's up? Session, we tried to do a heartbeat. You didn't respond. What's going on, right? So you sort that out, figure it out, right? So heartbeat interval. The next thing is we did sequence numbers. We did heartbeat interval. I think we might have covered all of the basics. I don't know if I forgot anything. Network layer, application layer, fix, session management, sequence numbers. We did password, authentication. I think we covered most of the basics. And if I remember something that I forgot, I will comment. I'll put in the comment section below. But these are the basics that you want to be aware of and be able to troubleshoot and work through, connectivity issues, establishing a new connection, whether it's for certification or for production um, purposes. So any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I think we are going to wrap it up so I can get back to my project. Okay. So, no questions. I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you, Ryan, for joining the live stream. This is Carlisle Speaks Wall Street, and this has been a troubleshooting primer. Gonna jump, enjoy how much you love this stuff, man. Appreciate it, man. So this is Carlisle Speaks Wall Street, and this has been troubleshooting fix sessions. And any questions, please comment below. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can. Really appreciate it. Click on the like button. Appreciate the support. And until next time, thanks for watching. Now to play the outro music. Bum bum ba-dum bum bum ba-dum bum bum ba-dum fix protocol. Okay, I'm not gonna sing, guys. Come on, let's be real. Let's be real.